We are very lucky today to have Denise Dudley here with us. So Denise has 32 years experience living the 7 habits of highly effective people. SkillPath was one of the first companies to sell Covey's book, and Denise is the founder of SkillPath. Most of her professional 7 habits experience has been in business, consulting, and training. Currently, she's a behavioral psychologist, professional trainer, business coach, author, and I met her because she's been very involved with the College of Business and our Center for Entrepreneurship, and just a great person. I think it was maybe when I first became area chair for industrial technology and packaging. I was talking to one of our older senior faculty members saying, I need a really good person to kind of kick us in the butt and get us going in the right direction. And he said, Denise Dudley, she's one of those kind of people that can put you in the right path. So Denise, thank you for being here tonight.
Oh, it's my pleasure, truly. That is how we met. I came and did a little talk for your retreat, I believe, for your IT staff, for your faculty.
Yeah. It was kind of a change in how we were sort of approaching kicking off the year. Usually we argue about, we spend half the day arguing about who's going to be on what committee, but a little inspirational injection there in the beginning of a long academic year. It was just the right thing to have happen. And like I said, I was lucky enough to meet Denise, through that. So Denise, tell us a little bit about, your kind of current role, what you're doing, and we'll get into how you learned about the 7 habits or whatnot, but just go ahead and start us off.
Well, so I know one of the questions you ask all of us is our career path, and that's always a funny one for me to talk about because, well, among other things, and it does sort of relate to the 7 habits in a backward kind of way. I think it's really easy to tell my story backward and talk about where I am today, and then work into years before and make it seem like I had a really linear path and I always knew what I was going to do. And I arrived here today just in time, like I'm screaming into this meeting exactly as I am, as if everything came together to be this right now and me right now. But it didn't really happen that way. A lot of my, I guess I'll say, experiences with my career were random events. And so I started out actually as a music major in college, violinist, serious violinist, actually played in symphonies. Spent 1 season with the Sacramento Symphony when I first moved out to California, and then discovered psychology, loved it, and went clear through a PhD, postdoctoral at Stanford. So I went all the way through PhD and postdoc in psychology, clinical psychology, and just fell in love with it. I loved it. I became the clinical director of a corporation of psychiatric hospitals. So I ran 18 hospitals, which gave me my experience in business, really, because although I was running the clinical area of these hospitals, I was also directing and supervising administrators, the staff, the directors of nursing, the program directors who ran the clinical portions of these psychiatric hospitals. So I learned how to be, I guess I'll say, an executive, and learned how to run businesses. And from there, because I was doing a lot of training, I left that corporation and I received an invitation to become a professional speaker. I was doing lots of big audiences in mental health, doing conferences where I'm talking to 2,000 people in Los Angeles, and it's a big mental health conference. So somebody scouted me and invited me to become a professional speaker, which
Denise, you got 19 people right here now that
Yeah, lucky me. I love small audiences, by the way. I just came back from teaching in Mexico. I teach at a retreat center, and I have usually about 40 people in that class, which for me is a pleasure because I'm often looking at 600 people. I can't know them all. And of course, with Zoom, I've talked to 200 people on Zoom too, and they're all like this big, like little postage stamps. So I can actually see all of you. I can see your faces, at least those.
Well, you can see the ones that have their videos on, right?
Videos on.
Wave and so.
Yeah, I appreciate seeing faces. Here comes another person. Hello. I like it that way.
Yeah, cool.
So anyway, I left the world of clinical psychology and psychiatric hospitals and became a professional speaker on the road 5 days a week, teaching big audiences. And I loved it. And so after I did that, this is a foreshortened version of the story, but I founded my own company, SkillPath Seminars, which does exactly what I had been doing on the road, putting on seminars. So SkillPath grew to become the world's largest public training organization. 200 million in sales a year, 350 employees, 800 trainers out there on the road every night doing what I had done myself. And I became the administrator of that kind of a program. So I sold it to a university. But during that time, and we're going to weave into this, I founded SkillPath in 1989. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People was published in 1989. And so really, Covey was out there. He'd been there already, but we were fledglings together, really developing our companies, and we knew each other. I knew Stephen Covey very well. I flew out to Provo many times and spoke with him and worked with him, and my company ended up becoming the first organization that did seminars for him using his material, because at that point, the Covey organization did not do seminars. They basically contracted with us to do their work. And similarly, same with Franklin, Franklin Planner, which we can get to in a moment. This all weaves together. So that's my career history, basically. And now I'm currently back on the road again because I love it. And I'm doing lots and lots of workshops, working in universities a lot with career readiness, working with adult learners, especially people who are going back into the career world, needing to do a little brush up on how you go on a job interview, things like that. I love it.
Denise, so we're pretty far into the quarter, right? And we're going to talk about habit 6, synergy. Today is going to be a topic, but they've been all through. And you mentioned sort of earlier on that maybe there was a lot of chance, and maybe it wasn't all like a habit to begin with the end in mind, sort of thing, for you. So like, but I'm also, just sort of blown away by the kind of things that you're doing now at this point in your career where, you don't necessarily have to. So I don't know, I guess it's a long way around asking is there sort of an end in mind looking forward or end in mind looking back, or can you recognize that sort of thing?
Yeah, I believe that when I was working way back, when I was working in psychiatric work, because I had different licenses and credentials to provide continuing education training to business and especially healthcare professionals. So I could provide CEUs to respiratory therapists and nurses and doctors and psychiatrists and people. I caught on very early that I love being able to speak to audiences and really believe in my core that what I said, what I taught, was going to make their jobs or their lives or their relationships better. And then I think that became the theme of my life, that I just really love the idea of thinking that I finish a talk or I finish a training session and someone is going to walk out and something in their lives will be enhanced or better. And I think that's what still drives me, because you're right. I don't have to, I'm not a billionaire, but I don't have to work right now. I can't imagine not working because it's not work. I love doing what I do. I love it.
Oh, that's so important. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. So, you said that you actually sort of talked and met and talked to Stephen Covey. I'm very envious of that. But and what was your sort of take was he comes off very good in his videos and things. Was he that sort of centered or nice a person, or what?
Yes, so I would go out to Provo. They were based in Provo, and this is before the merger with Franklin. So it just turns out that SkillPath was also involved with Hiram Smith, I believe his name was Smith, who had the Franklin Day Planner, and which then merged, became Franklin Covey. So Smith was in Salt Lake City. Covey people were up in Provo. That's not very far away. It's where Brigham Young University is. It's just up a kind of a mountain road. And so the two of them would know each other quite well because they're all Mormons. It's all Mormon people. And so And so it's Mormon people are very closely knit. I think they
Yeah.
pretty much know each other from their missions and things. So I was going up to Provo and meeting with Stephen Covey Sr., who's the big guy who passed away, and then his two main sons, Sean Covey and Stephen Jr., who's the son. And really, they had 9 children and 4 boys, 5 girls. You don't really hear about the other ones, the other children, except for Sean and Covey Jr., Stephen Covey Jr. And so I was meeting as much with Sean and Stephen Covey Jr. as I was with Senior. Senior was, he liked to be alone. He liked to be in the background. He walked in to any meeting or into any group of people working at Covey. It was a little bit like people sat up a little bit more, like, oh, he's here. And it wasn't because he wasn't well liked. I think it was because he was venerated. I think he was very much appreciated. Yeah. He was much quieter than you might think, very thoughtful. He used very measured words. He wasn't somebody who would just say, let's all get up and run out and have lunch. It'd be more like, let's think about this. And he spoke in much more measured terms. I think he was a nice man. He was very family oriented. His wife, can't think of her name, was Sandra. He was very much a family man, and a nice man. He was actually a nice man.
Yeah. Well, and I think that would be something that I would maybe aspire to, because it sort of sounds like from here you're talking about he was very comfortable with himself.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing who he was, because I think sometimes when I'm uncomfortable, I'll start talking a lot, just to sort of fill the uncomfortable space. But maybe you can choose not to do that, right? You can be a little more proactive about how you deal with the world.
That's well said. And I think that you're right. If I think back about him, I remember him very well. And yes, I would say that his somewhat quiet countenance was probably because he was very centered, very much believed what he believed in, and his principles of exercise, diet, being healthy, spirituality, sharpening the saw stuff. I think he really practiced that. I think that he looked like he was a person who was very good with taking good care of himself as well. Yeah.
So Denise, as a person who started a business as a corporate leader, the way this course is positioned for these Cal Poly students, we say, okay, it's about personal leadership. We're gonna show you this 7 habits model that sort of, it seems to me that it sort of undergirds, or it's sort of foundational for so many of the newer leadership models or things you see out there. Right, you can always see these sort of underlying 7 habits threads or foundations in it. Did you explicitly use this in your corporate leadership, or was it just something that you had sort of personally within you that you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I do. I think I got you. As a clinical psychologist, I'm going to paraphrase back what I think you said, which is,
okay, thank you.
Did I pick up the 7 habits from Stephen Covey and then start using them, or was I already using what then would come to be called the 7 habits? So a little of both, I'd say. For one thing, for one thing, the first things first. That phrase, first things first is not a phrase that Stephen Covey invented. It actually, if I know a lot of background stuff, because I'm one of those people who wants to know just where did this come from and how did it happen? And so really the first things first came from a poem in 1956, I think, by Auden. He wrote a poem called First Things First, and it was about first things first. And in fact, the last line of the poem is somewhat humorous. I don't think he means it humorously necessarily, but it says something about, it's more poetic than this, but many people have lived without love, but no one lives without water. He's talking about needing water, and like the idea of first things first. And that goes actually back to any of you who took psychology classes, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? That we have to start with food, clothing, and shelter, and then we move to the other things. Well, with first things first, my grandma used to say that to me when I was about 6. So long before I ever met Stephen Covey, that was something that literally my grandmother would say to me when we go to do certain jobs, accomplish them. So a lot of what Covey put together, and I'm not, by the way, trying to take away credit, because he did a magnificent job of assembling a lot of things, putting them together in a very, very readable, digestible form. So I have the best and the most admiration for Covey, but I'm just saying, first things first, that was kind of out there. And then that I love, by the way, like if you were to ask me what thing do I use all the time, it is those quadrants, the urgent and important versus important, not urgent. Those things, I live my life that way practically. I might not think those words, but when I sit down at my desk in the morning, or even I get up in the morning, I think what must be done now that's really important. It's urgent and important. And what thing can I put off? So those quadrants, the 4 quadrants, I think you've all gotten that far with it, right?
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So Denise, that's kind of exactly the thing. It sounds like, you kind of lived it, first, and you sort of had the internal 7 habits sort of barometer good. But if you had an employee or a manager that you had to sort of have a discussion with, did you guys use the language or explicitly use the concepts, or were they more implicitly sort of there in sort of management for you?
They were more implicitly there in terms of management. So now what happened is that SkillPath, we founded SkillPath in April. So we were alive and well and banging away at putting out our first seminar. Covey's book was published the same year, but in, I believe, August or September. So it just came out. It wasn't originally Simon & Schuster. It was by a group called Free Press. And so it was almost originally self-published. And that's why our company started interacting so much with it. It wasn't just a Simon & Schuster out there in Barnes and Noble or on Amazon immediately. And so we were carrying that book. And so we were already into our own management style before Covey introduced his book and came up with those words. But once those words were out there, there were many, many of our managers who actually used the 7 habits, literally the words, the 7 habits, or I guess I would call it as a, what we would say, a recipe for how to conduct a meeting. It would be just basically the template for conducting a meeting. Yes. So we did use them, and we would talk about win-win and how important that is. Begin with the end in mind. Those are very, very important concepts as you're developing a company.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. So, it's funny. Like earlier today, I was relating to some of the students that came on early. The TA for this class, Carly, had a little problem with her cell phone, and I guess with all the rain, somehow her cell phone got wet, and she was all kinds of panic because she had a big interview that I guess she was supposed to do on her cell phone, and so she had to go run to the phone store, and we said, I said to her, well, that sounds urgent and important to me, right? And we clicked on that, right? And we said, okay, we understand where this sits in the hierarchy of things that you need to do and take care of, right?
Yes. Yeah. It does ring. I think it's just a really good method for organizing yourself. And certainly at SkillPath, we had those sorts of things. We also, of course, since we are a training organization, sharpening the saw was something we talked about. And not only did we sell means to sharpen saws to our customers, but we were always sharpening our own saws by going off to our own seminars as well. Yeah.
Well, Denise, I think I've been monopolizing the conversation. I enjoy talking to you, and we keep on promising to get together and talk more some other times, but at least we get this, once a year to touch base. Hey, I want to ask the students if they have any questions. So if you got any questions for Denise, here's a chance. And Denise, you're also sort of around town when you're not, down doing retreats in Mexico and things, right?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I'm a lot more back on the road now that people are wanting me. For a while, I was just doing everything sitting in this office where I am today on Zoom. And now I'm actually back on the road again because people want face-to-face conferences and training and such, which is good. I love live audiences. But yes, I'm in town. I live here, and I also come to campus quite a bit. I love working with students. I love it, actually.
Yeah. Every once in a while, I'll see you coming in or going out of the building. It's always sort of nice to see you.
And
So
your-
questions for Denise? Anybody? Questions?
what's my favorite color? Anybody?
Yeah, Greta, go ahead. Ask your question.
What aspect of the 7 habits did you have the most trouble adjusting to, but found was eventually like beneficial?
Wow, a good one. That's a very, very good question. So I would say that my my worst habit is that I often don't sharpen my own saw enough. So I get myself super busy, and then I think I just have to keep going, and I think I don't really have time to do this thing that I know that would make me a better person, either a happier person, a calmer person, a healthier person, a more educated person. So I would say that today, to this day, I have a little bit of trouble with sharpening the saw because I tend to put myself last, which is part of what psychologists tend to be very empathic. We tend to be very other oriented. And I think that's really my personality. I'm often saying yes to more people and more things that I should. And in fact, one of my New Year's resolutions this year, which sounds like it's frivolous and it's not, but literally it is to have more fun. I need to have more fun. I need to sharpen my saw by having more fun. Not that I'm not having fun all the time. I have so darn much fun, you wouldn't believe it. I'm having fun right now, but I also need to get out and do some other fun activities. So I would say it still remains sharpen the saw. I think that one though that I want to point out that's hard for a lot of people and not necessarily hard for me. Again, as a psychologist, we get taught to be good listeners. We get taught to use paraphrasing. We get taught to really honestly seek first to understand. I spend my career working on understanding people I'm listening to. But I think sometimes, and this will be true for me, I'll admit it, that there are times when I might be irritated or I've already decided that I don't necessarily agree with someone. And it's hard for me to remember to just stop and seek first to understand. Just spend all the time you need to understand first. I want to add one more thing. I teach a class on how to deal with anger in yourself and other people. And so it's a big, long class I teach. I just taught it in Mexico, in fact. And one of the things I talk about in that class is that angry speakers, when someone is angry with you, they need to feel a sense of completion. They need to feel like they have been heard. Whether you're going to agree with them or not, they need to feel like they've been heard. That is absolutely classical Covey habit, to seek first to understand and then to be understood. And I just went over this in a big long class about you just have to sit there and let them get it out and help them to get it out and let them know that they have been understood. And that is so effective when someone's angry with us. So I think it's an important habit, an important one. But yeah, back to my bad habit, it's that I don't sharpen my saw. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Greta. You know, it's interesting. I was trying to relate, to the students. My favorite habit is the habit one: be proactive. I call it the I choose habit. So I'm always trying to say, okay, can I choose this, or and how does that work? And I said, well, an example might be choosing to stand in line and not be frustrated or aggravated. But you pointed out good, to make a choice to stand there while a person's being angry at you without blowing up back at them or retreating or whatever, to stay engaged. That's a choice and a half, and if you need to exercise and improve that muscle, that's a good way to do it.
It is. It really is. It does work, honestly. For a lot of reasons. Yeah, anger is just a bunch of hormones, and so I worked in research for a long time. So anybody want to take a guess? If we hook you up to an IV, we hook you up to lots of wires on your head too, but we hook you up to an IV and then do something to make you really mad, really mad. So this is all just hormones. So now you've got a whole bunch of stuff: cortisol, you've got adrenaline, you've got epinephrine, norepinephrine coursing through your veins. If we make you really mad and then we don't do anything more to make you mad, in other words, you get to do the calming down cycle, guess how long those hormones take to dissipate out of your bloodstream? Want to guess, anybody? 5 minutes. So if we can just let somebody talk, get it out, calm it down. In about 5 minutes, the hormones are going to subside, which is also why we don't want to keep agitating them and going at it, because we can also pump more hormones back in. So
Yeah.
5 minutes, it's going to be over. It's, if anybody has ever called Amazon, have you ever been mad at Amazon? I have. So you call Amazon, you're fit to be tied. You did this. So if you get a really good customer service person, they know this. They start saying things like, oh no, really? We did that? And then we lost it again. And then you called in and you got, we are so sorry. And then the wrong thing. And they're just like helping you get it out. And at the end, you're going, it was just a package. I'm fine. It's not a big deal. Well, they're good at letting you get it out, express it, and get the hormones out of your body. So it goes back to Covey, seek first to understand, then to be understood. So we're on a bit of a digression, but it sort of relates.
Oh, well, I think it all works. We're all trying to put our lives together and
Yeah.
make it work. Hey, Denise, so this has been wonderful once again. I'm gonna, kind of go for the close, at this point, and a good way to do that might be to have you give like one piece of advice to these young people that are just starting out on their 7 Habits journeys. And we've got some freshmen and we've got some seniors. So, people that still got 4 years of college ahead of them, and some that are just starting out on their careers. So what piece of advice would you give them?
Well, I believe the 7 Habits, like I said, is an assemblage of some very, very good habits to live by. And they really are. I think that every one of them is valuable. I think that he put together information that wasn't necessarily original thinking. Much of it was, by the way, but what he was really good at was assembling something that made sense, and he put it into a formula that's very workable. What I would say is that I wouldn't get too, as I'm learning the new habits, the 7 habits, and I would just go with the ones that speak to you. That'd be the thing I want to say or to advise you, that just go with what speaks to you the most. And I also wouldn't worry too hard. It's kind of similar to what Eric asked me earlier, that like, I guess in living your life, you say to yourself, I think that being a prompt person is important, which I do. So I think being a prompt person is important. So then if I try to reverse engineer that and say, well, which habit would that be now? Is that actually beginning with the end in mind? Because I just actually, or could that be a win-win because I didn't waste your time because I showed up on time, and so it's a win-win? Or is that actually a synergistic thing because we're working together better if I show up on time? I think it's okay to just say, I have a good habit of showing up on time. I have a good habit of following through with what I say I'm going to do. I have a good habit of being supportive with my friends. That those are all just wonderful traits, characteristics, whatever you want to call them. Which habit do they fit into? Don't worry about it. I think that it's okay to just say it fits into multiple habits. And if we become too rigid about that is this habit, but not that habit, or this only fits here, but not there, I think that's where people get a little hung up on the 7 habits and reject it. And I'd say, don't reject it, just enjoy it and choose what sings to you and then live it. It's a great way to live.
Wow. Well, Denise, thank you so much. That's a great way to end this conversation. I really appreciate your being here and your willingness to come out and support these young people, as they go off on their 7 Habits journey. So one of the concepts in 7 Habits is the emotional bank account. We learned about that a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess maybe a deposit for you would be if everybody turned on their video and waved thank you.
It'd be huge.
Would that be huge? That would be a huge
huge.
deposit.
It'd be a huge, huge thing to me. I don't know if you do that for all the people who come on. Do you have crowd come on?
We try.
Always come on. Good. Oh, it means everything to me. Also, if anybody can get a screenshot of that, my assistant would love to post that because she's always begging me for things to post on our social.
Okay. Well, if somebody will back me up, I'll get a screenshot. Go ahead and everybody and wave.
All right.
Everybody wave. There you go. So I got at least one. Hopefully somebody else got a backup for me. So we're
Thank you
good.
so much.
All right, Denise. Thanks a lot.
Take care, everybody. Thanks again, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.